Here's the biggest surprise for me in 2026, which is to find out that someone who is very anti-velocity banking is trying to tell me that I haven't been doing velocity banking, and instead I'm just helping people with their finances and pretending it's velocity banking. And so, if you've been out of the loop, I basically called out Learn and Grow Rich Now, and I called him a Senpai because I don't know if you know the Notice Me Senpai meme. And then we went through back and forth, 20 comments, and then you should see that what I'm saying is true. Basically, I ask questions in a way that no matter how you answer, you're going to lose. I'm assuming a good lawyer would do that, right? So I just did it in a way where you're going to lose. And what I asked him is, hey, and this is actually real life, if somebody is begging you for help for this thing called velocity banking, and it turns out that they have 21 debts and $4.10 left over, um, do you turn them away because you're saying the strategy is incredibly flawed and will not help anybody? Right? That was kind of the gist of my question, right? And basically, at the end of the conversation, because he did not want to answer, yes, this strategy could help people, he basically had to resort to semantics and definitions and just say, hey, this thing that you're talking about is not velocity banking. They're just asking for help with their finances and defining that as velocity banking. And I was just like, I did not expect that. Yes, using your line of credit as your main operating account, totally not velocity banking. Totally not. Moving all your loans and pretty much everything here. Look at all this loans, credit cards, everything into your personal line of credit in this situation. Totally not velocity banking. So I gotta go into my channel and re-edit everything so any mention of velocity banking is wiped out and I replace it with helping people with their finances. And if there's a reason why I wouldn't mention velocity banking, it's actually for regulatory reasons. But because we're just content creators, I think we're fine. But I always just tell people that it's not velocity banking; it's the velocity debt payoff strategy. But maybe going forward, I don't even say that. I just say helping people with their finances because apparently, I don't know what I'm talking about. People who are asking for help don't know what they're talking about. And, because like I said before, I ask questions in a way almost like a good lawyer would, that no matter how you answer, you're going to lose. He had to change the definition of what I'm doing is not velocity banking, which is kind of mind blowing to me. I mean, think about this, right? If he answers yes, basically he's admitting that the strategy is not flawed and there is an applicable use case to help people. So he can't answer that. And if he answers no, basically he's admitting that we have to turn away people we can help. So either way, it makes him look bad. So he had to resort to this. And here's the thing. If you want to say, hey, this chunking thing is stupid, I totally agree with you. Because if you have a 0% loan, and I've given this example all the time because that's the most extreme case of paying a loan with the line of credit, you having a 0% 30-year mortgage, and then you use that line of credit for one day, you've automatically overpaid. Right? I've already addressed that in many videos, but let's go ahead and do not velocity banking, helping people with their finances. Okay, helping people with their finance. We don't do velocity banking here. No, we do not. We help people with their finances, and that's all this stuff of using lines of credit to pay your debts and all that. No, not velocity banking. That's not it. It's helping people with their finances, and that's what we're going to do today. So, state of Illinois, if you're watching, just remember we don't do velocity banking. We're not a bank. We just help people with their finances. All right. Well, that's what's been going on, and so let's go ahead and get started with helping people with their finances. So, how do we how do we get started? Well, it's your budget because your budget is your debt attack plan. So you have your income, your expenses, your leftover checking and savings. And I'm sorry, I just can't. Uh, I can't. This was just not expected for my bingo card in 2026. Especially if you've been making as many videos of this topic as I have, and you just like want to get it to the Bruce Lee level where you hope to make 10,000 videos so that it's so easy, but this just was not expected on my part. Okay, let me go back here. So to get started, you have to create your budget because your budget is essentially your debt attack plan, right? This is your budget, and you have to list every single debt that you have as its own line item and the payment associated with it. And then in the last line item, you can clump together your expenses, which are not tied to debt, so food, gas, insurance, and all that. So sometimes people like to separate this out and be very detailed about this. I just like to give a very round figure just to make the demonstration easy. And what we're going to assume when we help people with their finances is that we're going to assume the same income, the same expenses. And not only that, we're not going to save money. See, the difference between the average American banking style and helping people with your finances, which is pretending to be velocity banking, is what is the role of your checking and savings account, right? So the role of your checking and savings account in the average American style of banking is that you pay your bills and then you put the leftover in your checking and savings, right? And what happens is that your income experiences a phenomenon called the segregation of income effect. So what we mean by that is that your $6,000 comes into your paycheck, or I'm sorry, your checking account. It gets split all over the place, and then you leave the leftover in your checking and savings, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on increasing this thing called cash flow. And in traditional banking, your checking and savings and cash flow is kind of the same thing, right? You ever hear real estate investors talk where it's like, oh, you pay your debts and then you deliver what you pay your expenses and whatever's left over is your cash flow. Okay. Whereas here, the way we think of our checking and savings is that it's just a temporary place to store money. It's not the permanent place. It's what I call a temporary bus stop. Okay, and so what we're going to do with all of this is that we're going to take put all of our paycheck into something called a line of credit. And if you don't know what a line of credit is, basically a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay it back, and then use it over and over again, right? So there's personal lines of credit, home equity lines of credit, even credit cards are technically a form of line of credit. But the only issue with a credit card is that it's very hard to pay one credit card with another, and it's very hard to pay one loan with the credit card, right? So even though you can do it, and the only way I really know how to do that, paying a loan with the credit cards using plastique.com, it's not, you can't really do it, or it's really hard, right? This is why most people never overpay credit cards, but you can overpay a line of credit, right? And that's what we're going to do as our method of paying off the debt is transfer some debt into a line of credit and put your paycheck in, take your expenses out. And according to this, like I said, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is not velocity banking. Usually your line of credit is your main operating account. I'm just helping people with finances. Helping people with finances and just pretending this is velocity banking, right? Velocity banking, what's that? Helping people with their finances and pretending it's velocity banking? All right. Okay, so not this one. We actually did this in a live stream. So if you want to actually watch this video, it's behind a 99-cent paywall, so make sure you join that and you'll have access to this, okay? But let me just go back here. So what we're going to do is rank our debts using something called the cash flow index, right? So if you don't know what the cash flow index is, basically a formula is debt divided by the payment, right? So you get all this and you have the formula, cash flow index. And so, yeah, I mean, so you might be wondering like, well, what does this mean? The lower the number, that's the debt you want to pay off, right? The lower the number. The higher the number, that's the debt you want to pay off last. So this is first, this is last. Think of this as a ranking system. And some people advocate for paying the mortgage first, and somebody actually introduced me to the pill method and said pay off your mortgage first. And I was just like, what? Because the deal with the mortgage is that you have to pay a lot of money for an itty bitty amount of cash flow. A lot of money for itty bitty amount of cash flow. Whereas you could just pay these two credit cards and you'll get more cash flow than the mortgage, right? So this is why we pay off the mortgage last. We get more as much cash flow as quickly as possible, and then apply it to other debts in a certain order and so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is take the lower cash flow index numbers below 50 and then move it into the line of credit. And so how much is this? This is 5, 8, 15, 27. And 5, 8, 15, oops, say 5, 15, 5, 15, 27. And then we're going to go ahead and sum it up. And is that $47,000? 5, 15, 27? Yes, it is. So let's go ahead and move $47,000 into the line of credit. Now, here's the thing, right? If you have plenty of debt and you don't really have that much left over, will the bank give you a free and clear $60,000 line of credit? Right? I pretty much ask this question every single video just to kind of address the elephant in the room. The answer to that is no. The answer to that is no. Why? Because banks don't lend money to people who need it, right? So if banks don't lend money to people who need it, why do we demonstrate with the free and clear line of credit? Because I'm telling you, this gets really complicated if you have a maxed out line of credit and you start out like this and you have a bunch of debt, right? It just gets way too hard to demonstrate in a 20-minute video. So join the 99-cent membership to see this video, right? And so that's the main reason why I don't. And I just start off with free and clear line of credit. Another reason I show a free and clear line of credit is that, hey, if you knew this strategy from the beginning, you would probably just never be here, right? That's another reason, okay? Because you're going to make your line of credit as your main operating account, meaning all your money goes into line of credit, and you take your expenses out of line of credit. So now that we moved the credit card debt into here, into an 8% home equity line of credit, well, guess what happens? Oh my goodness, 000. And if you take a look at this, bam, $500 to $2,000 with the same income. And we just shifted some expenses. All the debt is still there, but we kind of just did some creative accounting, quote creative accounting, to go from 500 to 2,000. And the whole point of this is that we don't save money. So here, I have a confession. This whole helping people with their finances thing, if you break it down and deconstruct it, it really is just not saving money 2.0, right? With the help of a line of credit. Okay, so now what we're going to do is put our entire paycheck into the line, take our expenses out, rinse and repeat over and over again. So if you want to see how that's calculated, relatively easy. So basically, it's you take your previous month's balance, previous month's interest, and then subtract whatever the current cash flow is. So 2018.33, and then what we're going to do is take the average daily balance. So I'm going to go do that right here, multiply it by the interest rate, and then divide by 12. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And so if you know how most lines of credit works, the very bare minimum that you'll ever pay is the interest, right? There's some lines of credit that charge the interest plus the principal, but here's the thing, that doesn't really matter because if you're dumping your entire 6,000, that's way more than the interest and the principal of the principal that you pay with the monthly payment. Okay, so I'm just going to go down here and then you see, oh, did I do this? I think I did do this last time. But you see, as a YouTuber, I just recycle content. But it's okay. Gotta evangelize, financial evangelism. So it's 26 months. Okay, so 26 months. And then this is going to be 5 plus 15 plus 27, so that's 47K. And then we see that with these three credit cards, it took us a little bit more than 2 years to pay it off. And then we have these three loan calculators right here. Or I'm sorry, three loans in the loan calculator right here. So what we do is put in 26 months, right? So this is going to be this, whoopsie, 26, 26, 26. And we're going to copy and paste. And then we see right here, this is the current cash flow index, and we just follow the same formula, right? So a lot of people say, well, the 7% interest loan is what we should focus on because it has the highest interest rate. Definitely not the 3. Let's pay this off last. And so the way we do it is we're going to pay this 3 off last, especially with the cash flow index under 50, 40, right? Relatively low. And because if we pay this 12 grand off, we're going to get $395 of cash flow. Remember, interest paid is not just about the interest rate, it's also about time and volume. So if I borrow, let's say, $100,000 at 10% interest rate, and then I pay that loan off tomorrow, okay, I'm not going to pay 10% interest because that 10% is annually calculated, right? So it's something that we have to consider. So this 3%, because we can recover the cash flow, is not of an interest to us, and then we'll use this $395 and use it to pay off the 7%. Okay, so let me go ahead and move this right here, and I'm just going to do this. And then this is going to be plus 12869.8. And then this is going to be 0 right here, so it's $395. And then $2,400, 13 cents. Or actually, let me just do this. And then this is going to be 2413.64. And then this is going to be 31 months of the next loan, the auto loan paid off, right? So 31 months. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do this right here. I'm going to do this, comma, 47 plus 22, and this would be 64K. And then for a student loan and mortgage, and then this is going to be 31, 31, and then this is going to be 0. And then now we can focus on paying off the 7% mortgage. Now, realistically, would I move the entire loan into a line of credit? No, but it depends on this situation because if the interest rate were same and higher, I definitely, feel comfortable doing it. But if there's an interest rate difference and the term of the loan is incredibly long, I definitely wouldn't do it. Right. So that's why I'm not going to move this entire 30-year mortgage into a line of credit. So let me just move this into a line of credit first. I feel comfortable doing it, even though I feel like I may be overpaying just a slight tad. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And then plus 32172.18. And then I'm going to go ahead and then do 0 on the student loan. Okay, and then we're going to apply that cash flow into the line of credit right here. And so, hold on. Oh, yeah. Okay. Right. So you see, let me just see. Hold on. Is this the right cash flow? Let me just quickly check if I'm doing this right. 2878. Okay. So I just want to. Oh, you know what? I screwed up. Okay. What am I doing? Hold on. Let me redo this again. Sorry. Okay. So, yeah. So it's right here. So now it's going to be minus 2878.07. And that's 43 months, right? So 43 months, that student loan is paid off. And then I just do this right here. And then this is going to be 104K. And then this is going to be a 30-year mortgage at 43 months. So I just put 43 right here. And then this is 0. And then this is 219,000 current balance. And we have two options to pay off the loan, right? So what you can do is just make direct extra payments with this $2,878.07. And if you can do it, there's actually no problem with that. But most people can't do it because overpaying a loan and even a credit card introduces friction in how your money moves, right? Which is why most people can't do it. So if I, make the monthly payment and I put the entire 2,000, a lot of people think they can't get the money back, which is not true. You just use credit cards as your backup or lines of credit. But the issue with that is that most people, okay, they need to stop segregating their income, right? So if the only thing that you can learn from this is that a lot of times people understand how banks make money, which is that you essentially have a bunch of debts, make minimum payments on that debt for the entire life of whatever that debt is, and then that's how they accrue interest, right? And so one of the reasons why we're able to go from here to here is that we did not segregate our income and we just put our entire paycheck into one place, which is line of credit. Now, if you're saying, hey, by the time I get to the mortgage, I don't need to do that anymore because I'm a big boy and I'll take off my training wheels, um, I'll just say, yeah, that's fine. No worry about that. But as an alternative, if you want to keep the training wheels, or maybe the seatbelt would be a better analogy, is that you can still use your line of credit to pay off the loan, right? So there's this thing that we call chunking or sweeping. I like using the word sweeping, it sounds better, right? And I think there was a company a long time ago, or I don't know if they still exist, in Hawaii called Sweep Strategies that was like one of the first promoters of this. But basically, all you do is just take a piece of the loan and move into line of credit and then rinse and repeat over and over again. And so the reason why executing this is actually easier is because there's less thinking involved, right? Because what do you have to do? Is just make sure your checking account goes to zero, which is what we've always been doing. Um, and then your line of credit goes to zero and just rinse and repeat over and over again. Whereas with extra payments, okay, it eventually the reason why people don't do this, even though they know this is default option, is because it just requires too much brain power on their part, which leads to decision fatigue. And you know the saying, confused mind does nothing, right? So basically, the reason why you have to use brain power, or at least a lot of people do, is because they know that when they put the money into loan, it's not that the money is gone forever. It's just that there's a lot of friction in being able to use the money again, right? And so they literally make the calculation every month. Do I pay extra today? And this is why I put perceived risk level, because when you overdump a loan, money is gone forever. And not only that, here's the thing about extra payments is that when you put an extra payment into a very, very big loan, it's very psychologically discouraging, right? When you do a small amount, you're just kind of clearing the level. And you can actually gain a lot of momentum from this, just from the small wins that you create from doing this, because you're not focused on, wiping out the entire loan. You're just wiping, focus on finishing the sprint and then doing it over and over again, right? So here, let me just kind of show you how this works. So let's say we take $6,000 of this 235,000 mortgage, move it into the line of credit. I'm just going to show you right here. So this is just kind of a rough approximation of what would happen. And then you see that in about 2 months, that 6,000 is gone, right? Every 2 months, and you just rinse and repeat over and over again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in about 7 months, you paid off about 24 grand of principal, right? So here's the most important thing a lot of people kind of ignore is that it doesn't really matter if you use a line of credit or extra payments, right? If you can do extra payments, I just say go do it, right? If you think all this is complicated, just go do it. The part that people really misunderstand is the debt payoff order, right? The debt payoff order. So this has to be paid last because you have itty bitty amount of cash flow for using the line for if you pay off this loan, right? You get itty bitty amount of cash flow. So let me just kind of go here and actually have this calculator here where you can kind of play around. And so here's the thing that I just want to warn you about, which in my view is a no bueno, right? If I move this entire loan into a line of credit, I pay 55 grand. If I do this chunking thing or sweeping $6,000, look, you pay half the interest, right? And here's the crazy part. Okay, here's the crazy part. If this is a 30% interest line of credit or a credit card, you only pay about 5 grand more. Or four, yeah, 5 grand more. So if I do 15%, right? You see how you go from 8 to 15? It's like literally almost $1,000 difference or so. 8 to 15. Like this is probably the most mind blowing thing that I didn't understand at the time. Like if what this taught me is that yes, the interest rate is higher, but using a higher interest rate won't necessarily affect you unless there's a huge difference between, let's say, what you like an 8 to a 30, right? And even an 8 to a 30 is only like 5 grand more. And if you take a kind of a look at a high level, that's almost like a loan origination fee, or probably even less than a loan origination fee. And you might kind of use things like credit card rewards points to offset these things. So I'm not going to talk about that because this is just assuming this is a pure line of credit, like a home equity or personal, but or at least this is how this calculator calculates it. But what I'm saying is that wow, like okay, interest rates, yes, they do matter, but if I have the added benefit of freely moving my money in and out and making it easy for me to do that, would I not pay a little bit extra if that's the case? If the only thing I have access to is a 15% line of credit, right? And that's something that we don't talk about, which is trade-offs, right? Everything has trade-offs, right? So you don't want to just kind of say, hey, this is bad just because it has a higher interest rate, right? Because Interest rates represent two things. Number one is the perceived risk level of the borrower, and number two is how much access you have to the money. So with the line of credit, because you have the two-way access, they will charge a higher interest rate, right, than a loan, comparing apples to apples. But because the line of credit makes our life so much easier to not segregate our income, maybe we should use it even till the very end, right? It's like wear your seatbelt until the very end, until the ride is over, right? Even if you're at the end of the line. Okay, and if you say, hey, that I can just do it without the seatbelt, I don't need a silly line of credit, all power to you, right? I'm not going to argue with that. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. This is Korean Atlanta Mentorship here with another video. And so if you've made it to the end of this video and you want to let me know, just type in the comments below. We don't do velocity banking here. We help people with their finances. Okay, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.